The sound of laughter echoed across the valley that morning, music, campfires, hundreds of tents, and right in the middle of my land a banner that read, "Welcome to Karen's Freedom Campout." They were dancing on my soil, drinking under my trees, 500 strangers trampling the same fields my father once plowed by hand. I called the sheriff. No one came. Karen had permission. She said a lie printed on fake HOA letters she'd made herself. So I waited, watched, let the sun go down, and when the fires burned brightest, I opened the northern gate. 24 bulls stormed through like thunder, and that was the moment the Freedom Campout became the wildest HOA mass evacuation in county history. The first thing I noticed that morning wasn't the noise, it was the smoke. Thin trails of it rising beyond the hill where my father's old barn once stood. I thought maybe some kids were trespassing again, but as I got closer, the air changed. I heard laughter, loud music, the metallic clang of beer cans hitting the ground, and then I saw them, tents, hundreds of them. My entire pasture, my family's grazing land, had been turned into a makeshift festival ground. Cars lined the dirt road for half a mile. Banners hung from trees that read HOA Freedom Campout hosted by Karen Lewis. At first, I didn't even believe what I was seeing. People were roasting marshmallows on my fence posts. Children were climbing the corral gates like it was a playground. And in the center of it all, standing on top of a picnic table with a megaphone, was Karen. Blonde hair stiff with hairspray, sunglasses reflecting the morning sun, wearing a shirt that said HOA President Deal with IT. She was yelling, "This land is part of our community park now. The HOA board voted on it. Everyone's welcome." And they cheered. 500 people clapping, chanting her name like she was some kind of hero. I stood there at the edge of my fence, speechless. My father's sign, the one that read Moore Ranch, established 1957, was gone, replaced with a cheap vinyl banner that said Freedom Grounds. That's when I realized it wasn't just arrogance, it was a message. Karen wasn't just invading my land. She was humiliating me publicly. She wanted to prove that the HOA controlled everything around here, even property outside their boundary lines, and the worst part, the sheriff wouldn't help. When I called, the deputy sounded tired. "Mr. Moore, technically if they're claiming community rights, it's a civil matter. You'll have to take it to court." "Court," I said. "By the time a judge hears this, there'll be a music festival in my living room." He sighed. "Sorry, sir, that's HOA territory. You'll need proof they're outside jurisdiction." Click, that was it. I was on my own. So I grabbed my binoculars, climbed up the water tower behind the barn, and started watching. For 2 days I watched. I recorded videos, license plates, drone footage, everything. Karen strutted around like a celebrity. She had rented portable toilets, hired a band, even charged people HOA access fees. The greed was staggering. She had turned my family ranch sacred soil into her personal profit playground. But there's one thing Karen didn't know. On the far side of the property beyond the ridge was my herd. 24 massive Spanish fighting bulls, the last animals my father raised before he passed. Strong, territorial, and quick to charge anything that moved too fast. And for the past 3 years, I'd been the only one feeding them. They knew my voice, my scent, but they didn't know strangers. By the third night, Karen's Freedom Campout had turned into chaos. Drunken arguments, broken glass, loud music shaking the hills. I could see the exhaustion in her eyes as she tried to keep her little empire under control. That's when I decided, if she wanted a freedom festival, I'd give her a taste of real freedom, the kind that nature enforces, not man-made HOA rules. I spent the next morning preparing, repaired the northern fence, checked the gates, fed the bulls early, then I waited. By dusk, the campers were gathering for their sunset ceremony, Karen at the front, holding her megaphone, ready to give another speech about taking back the land. I watched from my truck on the ridge, engine off, heart steady. The moment the music started, I grabbed the bolt cutters, walked to the old oak gate on the north side, and whispered to the herd, "Go on, boys, time to clean house." The hinges snapped, the gate swung open. And silence turned into thunder. 24 bulls tore down that hill like an army of shadows. Dust exploded into the air. Horns glinted under the fading sunlight. Karen froze beach, then chaos. Screaming, running, tents collapsing, people diving into trucks and sprinting toward the road. It was like watching a wave of pure panic sweep across her freedom camp. The same people who cheered her name were now trampling each other to escape. Karen tried to climb onto a folding table, yelling, "Stay calm, they're just cows." Then one bull charged straight through the food stand, sending the grill flying. Flames burst up, music cut out. The whole place turned into a dust storm of terror. I stood at the ridge, arms folded, watching the empire she built crumble in seconds. And when the last tent hit the ground, when the final camper vanished down the road, only one person was left standing in that field. Karen, covered in dirt, staring at the mess she'd made, shaking with rage. She looked up at me. "You'll pay for this," she screamed, pointing. "You and your stupid animals." I didn't move. I just looked back at her and said quietly, "No, Karen, you already paid." The next morning, the valley looked like a war zone. Torn tents flapped in the wind. Beer cans scattered like confetti across the dry grass. And somewhere near the broken fence line, Karen's glitter-covered megaphone lay half buried in the dirt. I parked my truck near the gate, got out, and just stared. The same field my father once used for harvest was now a wasteland of her arrogance. But the peace didn't last long. Within an hour, 3 county vehicles and 2 black SUV pulled up. Out stepped Karen, sunglasses on, hair messy, clothes stained, but her ego still burning hot. She marched right toward me, waving a stack of papers like a weapon. "You think this is over?" she shouted. "You assaulted 500 people. You terrorized a community event. You're going to jail for this." Behind her, a local reporter adjusted her camera, smelling a story. The crowd of remaining HOA members hovered nearby, whispering. I leaned against my truck, calm as ever. "Assault, huh? On my own land? You sure you want to file that report, Karen?" Her jaw tightened. "This land is under HOA jurisdiction. We voted on it." I laughed quietly. "You can't vote your way onto someone else's property, Karen." She shoved a paper into my chest. "Court summons. We'll see what the judge thinks." I glanced down. It was an official-looking HOA complaint. But the address was wrong. She had filed it under community grounds, not Moore Ranch. The arrogance was unbelievable. I looked her dead in the eye. "You really should have learned where your lines end." That night, I sat in my father's old office, flipping through the dusty files he'd kept. Every document, every deed, every boundary map, and there it was, the smoking gun, a hand-drawn survey map from 1968, signed by the original developer. It showed that the HOA line stopped 2 miles before my fence, meaning Karen's Freedom Campout wasn't just a trespass. It was a full-scale illegal occupation. I called my lawyer, Avery Hunt. When she picked up, she didn't even let me finish. "You've got proof, original survey, notarized, perfect, don't confront her again, let me handle the rest." By morning, it had already started. The local news stations picked up the footage of the stampede clips of people screaming, tents flying, Karen running for her car. Social media had a field day. The hashtags were brutal. #BullRun HOA, #Karen Campout crash, #Freedom failed, Karen's Freedom Campout had gone viral overnight, but she didn't back down. Oh no, Karen doubled down. She called an emergency HOA meeting that evening, standing on a podium like a fallen queen. The remaining board members gathered around her in the clubhouse. She slammed her fist on the table. "That man thinks he can humiliate me. He thinks a few cows can scare us." Someone corrected, "They were bulls, ma'am." She glared. "I don't care if they were dinosaurs. We're suing him for property damage, endangerment, and emotional distress." She had no idea she was building her own noose. 2 days later, Avery and I walked into the county courthouse. She was calm, collected a shark in heels. Karen sat on the other side of the room, her fake confidence cracking, surrounded by reporters. When the judge entered, Avery stood. "Your Honor," she said, "the HOA has filed an assault complaint against my client for events that occurred on what they claim is community land. We're here to prove that not only was the HOA trespassing, but that their president fabricated documents to extend HOA control beyond legal boundaries. Karen's attorney laughed. Fabricated? She was exercising HOA rights, ma'am. Avery opened her briefcase. Then I'm sure you won't mind these. She laid down the original 1968 map. The courtroom fell silent. Then she pulled out county registry records, showing the same property lines. The HOA border stopped 2 miles short of Moore Ranch. The judge frowned. Mrs. Lewis, did you personally authorize this event? Karen swallowed hard. It was community. Approved, answer the question. Yes, she whispered. Did you or did you not collect payments for attendance? Karen hesitated. Avery slid another document forward, online receipts with her signature. The judge leaned forward. So you invited 500 people to camp on private land, charged them entry fees, and are now suing the rightful owner for damages caused by your event. Karen didn't respond. The judge slammed his gavel. Case dismissed, and I'm recommending a full county investigation into HOA financial fraud. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Karen sat frozen. Her attorney quietly packed up his files and left without a word. Avery turned to me smirking. That's round one. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. One asked, Mr. Moore, what do you think about what happened? I looked into the camera and said, my father always told me when someone disrespects your land, don't argue. Let the land defend itself. That clip went viral within hours. Karen's face was plastered all over the news, screaming, arguing, trying to defend the indefensible. Sponsors pulled funding from her HOA. Members started resigning. The county froze her accounts pending investigation. By the end of the week, the Freedom Campout that was supposed to make her famous had turned her into a meme. That night, I walked back to the northern ridge. The moonlight fell softly across the empty field. My bulls grazed peacefully, calm and quiet now that the noise was gone. I knelt beside the fence and whispered, good work, boys. The wind carried the sound of rustling grass through the valley, the only applause that ever mattered. A week later, the HOA board called an emergency meeting, not to support Karen but to remove her. The once queen of the neighborhood walked into the room wearing sunglasses to hide her shame. Cameras followed her every step. Her voice trembled as the board voted unanimously to strip her of her title. She tried to speak, but no one listened. Her reign was over. Outside, I waited near my truck. When she saw me, she froze. You ruined me, she hissed. I stepped closer, calm. No, Karen, you ruined yourself the moment you thought power gave you permission to steal. She looked away, tears breaking through her pride. You could have just told me to leave. I smiled faintly. I did. The bulls did the rest. As she drove off, her car kicking up dust on the same road she once claimed as hers, I turned back toward the open field. The grass was growing again. The fences stood tall. And for the first time in years, the land felt alive, peaceful, honest, free. I walked up to the northern gate, the one I'd opened that night, and ran my hand across the wood. The bulls grazed quietly in the distance, the sun setting behind them like fire on the horizon. My father used to say, land remembers who it belongs to. And that day, I finally understood what he meant. Karen built her empire on lies. I built my peace on patience. And in the end, patience always wins.